Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So I'm outside the house in London where Chopin stayed when he gave his last public performance in this country. So Chopin is a French-Polish composer. He's more associated with Poland. He's one of Poland's most celebrated composers, well, perhaps the most celebrated composer from Poland, even though he spent his adult life in France. I don't know a great deal about music, so I'm not going to speak for very long. So we're in the St. James area, which is a very plush area, really close to St. James's Palace. Now, it's maybe too dark, you can't see up that high. So Chopin was born in the Duchy of Warsaw in 1810, and he had a French father and a Polish mother. So Poland wasn't an independent country then at the time. The third partition of Poland had taken place in the 1770s. Napoleon had come back and briefly revived Poland as an independent country as the Grand Duchy of Warsaw, but Napoleon had been defeated. Anyway, Chopin's father had come from France rather before that, so Chopin's father was middle age when Chopin was born, and Chopin grew up bilingual, so he's known in the West by the French version of his name, Frederic Chopin. So he showed extraordinary early promise as a musician and as a composer. Studied in Poland, but in his late teens he moved to Paris, where he spent most of the remainder of his life, visiting Poland only occasionally. He was friends with Franz Liszt, and he moved in literary circles there. He was fascinated by poetry as well. He set many Polish poems to music. He composed lots of polonaise and mazurka, and took traditional Polish music forms and westernized them just a little bit. But I think Poles are often to say we're kind of Western European and Central European, we're not really Eastern European, we're not Orthodox Christians and so on, and had a great cultural affinity for France, and some French people were quite sympathetic to the cause of Polish independence. So there started to be a significant Polish exile community in France, and there is to this day, but they're mostly largely integrated and intermarried. Anyway, Chopin's fame spread far and wide, but he didn't like giving concerts. He performed in a salon for an intimate group of musical aficionados, people felt were educated enough musically to really appreciate his work. So he was a fairly private person. He had a number of failed relationships with women. He never married. So he traveled around Western Europe. He went to, I think it was Mallorca, one of the Spanish islands, with his fiancée, but they didn't end up marrying in the end. There was a British woman called Jane Sterling who heard about him. She was very wealthy, considered herself a patron of the arts, and she subsidized him. So he lived in some comfort, but he was not as wealthy as you might think, considering just how famous he is. So he visited this country, performed in the Guildhall, which wasn't used for concerts very much. It's in the city of London, as in guilds could meet there, as in trades associations like for carpenters or goldsmiths or barbers or whatever. But the Lord Mayor of London would sometimes hold court there. It was a great honour to be invited to perform at the Guildhall. So he travelled from here to the east that's where the Guildhall is. But he was plagued by ill health in the 1840s. Then he died in Paris at the age of 39. He's buried at Père Lachaise Cemetery. Now, the funeral march, Chopin's funeral march, is his most exquisite piece of music, and that's my penny's worth, even though I know sweet FA about music. Is that famous one is the absolutely classic funeral dirge. It's very somber, like dun dun da dun dun da dun 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 da dun 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 da dun dun da dun 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 da dun. But there are lighter and sweeter moments of it when it seems to recall the joy of youth and happier, carefree days in sunlit, flower-filled valleys, and now the person is being borne to the grave and being lowered into the cold clay. So I find it poignant. And it's played at many state funerals, ironically enough at the funerals of Soviet leaders, even though Chopin was not too pleased that the eastern half of his homeland was part of the Russian Empire, which did everything it could to smother the Polish identity, to discourage the Polish language, to force people to learn Russian and so on. Anyway, so that is enough about Chopin. Toodaloo.